need to get back. I've only been to Canada once, and that was Montreal. I went to a conference, and that was it. But that was uh, 15 years ago, I guess.
That's where I'm from. I'm from Montreal.
It was good times. Yeah, I don't enable technologies. I know they got acquired, then they spun back off. So I don't know if that's still their headquarters or not, but it was at the time. So they had their global conference, and I went to it back then.
So you've never been to Toronto?
No, I have not.
Okay. Have you been to the Rocky Mountains in USA or?
I have not.
No? Oh, you should come to Canada, go to Alberta.
Send me an invite. I'll head up there.
Okay.
Passport's ready to go.
Anytime. You have all my invitations. I'll send you an invitation today.
Yeah.
So people are slowly joining in, so give them a little bit more time. Let's give them maybe a couple of more minutes, and then we'll start. So we have about 30 participants. We had a couple of more participants registered today. So I'm hoping all of them to join in. We've sent them reminders. We should be hearing from them pretty soon, or they should be joining in. But I'll give one more minute and then we'll start at least with the introductions. So I think we can start with introductions. We can start with the introductions. Can I start? Can I ask Gary to introduce himself and tell us about his industry experience, background, and everything about yourself so that everybody is aware of your background in the industry?
Well, we only have an hour, so I'll give you the condensed Coles version in maybe 2 minutes or less. Gary Mofford, currently based in Toronto, Canada, and work for CompTIA. I am the business development director here in Canada. I've been in technology for 40 years. What does that mean? It means, well, you're looking at somebody who sold the original Apple Lisa. You're looking at somebody who sold the first IBM PC with 2 floppy drives before the 10 meg, not gig, before the 10 megabyte hard drive was invented. And then watch the evolution of the PC industry right from the very beginning, from the Mac Pluses and Macintosh right through to where we are today. One thing is for sure, for everybody joining this call, if this is your first journey into tech and you're thinking that you're going to train, learn, and then work the next 40 years and not have to train and learn again, you are sadly mistaken. This is an industry that invents and reinvents itself. Heck, 10 years ago, we weren't even talking that much about cloud and AI and so on, and that's only going to change and evolve again. So my career has fundamentally been mostly through sales. I've held various leadership sales positions for the largest tech companies. I've been the director of sales for Dell, for HP, for Oracle, VMware, Commvault, Nimble Storage. And lastly, before joining CompTIA, I was the director of sales or the sales leader here in Canada for AWS. I ran education and not-for-profit for AWS before joining CompTIA. Why am I at CompTIA? I hope it's the last place I end up in my career. It's an opportunity for me to give back to the tech industry, great careers that people have had. But if there's one thing I'd like everybody to take away, if this is the beginning of your journey, it's just the beginning. The job you end up with right out of school does not necessarily indicate where you'll end up at the end of your career. There has to be a starting point. And I'll just give you a simple analogy. Anybody who's ever been on a cruise ship, just because you graduated as a sailor does not mean you start as the captain of one of Carnival's largest cruise ship. You may join the ranks of the officers, but it might be 30 years before you're the captain. So think of your journey that way, and you can have a long and fulfilled career inside of tech. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Gary. I'll ask Sue as Sue, I've known Sue for about 10 years, and she's one of my favorite academics. She's very highly respected in the industry. So, Sue, would you please provide us with some background about your education and your industry experience?
Sure. So I worked in industry at a .com, but right before the .com bust, which many folks on this call probably don't even remember. From there, I went back to school, floated around in some social services areas, ended up back at a .com in their training and customer management portfolio. So really got sort of my feet wet with some tech parts. But really decided that my passion was in education. And so for the last 13 years, I have been working in the education field, higher education. I have a master's in education, and I'm currently working on my PhD.
Very good. And then we have another panelist, Jason. Jason is also very highly respected in the industry. He's in USA. So Jason, could you please introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Jason Rorie. I am the founder and CEO of both Triad InfoSec and Triad Cyber Academy. So Triad InfoSec, we're an advisory firm focused on cyber leadership, fractional CISO, and compliance services. And on the Triad Cyber Academy side, we help train, certify, upskill people. We partner with Ferrotech on some training initiatives. So just big proponent of education in general, and I love calls like this. I love CompTIA. Actually passed my A+ 22 years ago, and I haven't stopped getting certified since then. I also have 2 undergrad degrees in computer network engineering, management of technology, my master's in cybersecurity, and I'm entering a doctoral program in cybersecurity as well. So that's on my future kind of roadmap as I continue to get certified. So happy to, just provide any advice that I've learned over my 30 years in the industry.
So, Jason, tell us a little bit about your experience in Marine Corps.
Well, it was the U.S. Navy, so I don't want to make any Marines upset. But yeah, I went in, to learn about computers and technology. Now, granted, it was the mid 90s, so the technology definitely was nowhere near it is today, obviously. But I had a top secret security clearance, so learned a lot about securing communications, cryptography, a little bit about the computers that we had, on our ship. So it was a great experience, and just kind of put me on the right roadmap career-wise, coming out of the military to start, formalizing my education and learning more about computers, technology, networking, and ultimately end up in cyber.
Very nice, very good. So me myself, I'm also like Gary. I've got nearly 40 years of experience in technology. I used to work even before Apple came in. I was an expert with publishing, especially typesetting computers and computer controlled cameras and film processors. And then from there, I went into industrial automation, and then we started having those Apple computers, and then Apple desktop publishing replaced a lot of printing industry, and a lot of organizations that were established for hundreds of years, they went bankrupt because of Apple's desktop publishing. There was a revolution in the industry. Also, did a lot of industrial automation, capturing data, writing my own applications, and all through this, I've been involved in education as well. I did my master's in information security, probably the first cohort ever. And from there onwards, did my MBA and nearly every certification that you can think of. And I also teach those certifications like CISP, CISA, and I feel that CompTIA is where it all begins. So CompTIA is where people should start before they start going or elevating themselves in the industry. As Gary said, it takes 30 years. You may start someplace, you may even become an officer, but it'll take you 30 years to lead that organization or lead that. Or you can, it's sometimes you can get pushed into that position, and then you speed up your learning process in the way. So if everybody's okay, I'm going to ask Sue our first question, or to start off our panel discussion. So what do we mean by cybersecurity?
I froze. Okay, so cybersecurity is really, if you break down the word, it's really about protecting the internet and the online assets. But in actuality, it's not just online assets. It's all of the digital assets that a company has. So it's everything from the payroll information that's stored on somebody's laptop machine to the servers that a company has or the cloud services that somebody uses. So whether that's Amazon, Google, or a service as a service such as an SAP or something.
Yeah, Jason, from the industry experience.
No, I mean, no, Sue's absolutely right, and I'll echo, what she says. Yeah, it's anything that really is an electronic digital format. So if you look at information security, which is everything, whether it may be in a physical form, cyber is the largest piece of your overall information security program. With obviously the gains in technologies over the years, most organizations now pretty much are purely digital. So cyber is the way you protect your organization. The physical things are becoming less and less more important. So that's why I think everything shift really from a pure infosec focus to cybersecurity.
Okay, very good. And Gary, do you have any input on what cybersecurity really means?
Well, I don't answer any question without using analogies that speaks to everybody at any level. Some of your world's best engineers are your criminals, because your criminals figure out a way how to break through any security that you put up. You try to protect your house with as many cameras and anything else that you have. They find a way around to come in and steal what you have. So the digital world is simply that. It's folks who don't belong where you work, trying to get in and steal things from you, either as a competitive advantage, either simply to hold you hostage, as in the case of ransomware. And the companies and those that work in those departments are there to defend. They're there to protect what so much hard work has gone on in a company. And of course, companies have missions and things they want to accomplish, and they don't want that being derailed by people who come in with just either sometimes just to wreak havoc for no reason, but oftentimes espionage at its highest level.
Yeah, absolutely. From an academic purpose, I define cybersecurity as protecting information that's at rest, which is stored, of data which is in transit, which is being sent from one computer to the next computer or one network to the next computer, and data that is being processed. So even while you're processing the data, you need to protect it so that a hacker cannot see it, or they're not able to they're not able to steal that information. We have a question here. Jason, would you like to take this question? What are the necessary requirements for a person trying to breaking into the cybersecurity industry for an entry-level position? Maybe Gary is being the head of CompTIA business development. And with 40 years of experience, Gary, what do you think?
Well, I think if someone is simply thinking that you look out into the job market and you see tens of thousands of cyber jobs open everywhere, And there's almost not a week goes by that somebody doesn't get through to my phone number and say, hey, Gary, we know there's thousands of jobs here in Canada open for cyber. What course can I take so that I can get one of those jobs? My answer is always the same. If there were 1,000 5-star Juilliard chef jobs open, would you be able to apply for it simply because you know how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and boil an egg? The answer, of course, is no. You can't. So it really starts with having a really good foundational understanding of tech and technology. And I would direct anybody to make sure that they have that foundational basis to start building upon. That generally comes in CompTIA's language with the A+ certification, which basically makes you a generalist. Another way to look at it is think of A+ as your family doctor. Your family doctor is there for the intake purpose and deals with all kinds of random people coming at them every day with various illnesses and sicknesses, and they try to triage it as best as they can. But when they need a specialist, they'll send you to the oncologist, the cardiologist, and so on and so forth. Well, those specialty areas are your networking people, your security people, your cyber people. You're going to gain the fastest amount of knowledge and ability to move into cyber roles by starting at the triage level, which is generally the help desk, because you will be exposed to all the incoming calls. And slowly over time, you will see how those problems get solved, what teams solve them, and how you can gain that knowledge and apply it to furthering your career. That's my humble opinion.
Jason?
You see Jason's nodding.
Yeah, well, I think Gary just explained my career. And that's exactly how I started. Yeah, A+, Network Plus, got into some entry level help desk support roles and just learned networking. Yeah, dabbled in that for a while. Moved into doing CCNA type work, and yeah, you just get exposed, and it comes a time where you pick a lane. Either you can stay in IT, and there's a lot of lanes inside of IT, or you can move over to the security side, and start at a foundational level with like Security Plus, CYSA Plus. Kind of maybe line up for a SOC analyst type position. It's kind of the cybersecurity version of a help desk, and then that could position you, to then choose your lane in cyber. You can go into endpoint threat hunting, red teaming, more management, GRC type of things. But to Gary's point, he's absolutely right. You have to have a foundational level, and A+ Network Plus is a great way to start, just to understand technology and computers in general and how they talk to each other, and then kind of progress into Security Plus and some other entry level security certs.
And I'll ask Sue as a academic, a career academic, to also provide her input.
I think I just have to echo what Jason and what Gary have said. I think that it's an important field, but it is a specialization, and so chances of being able to go right into that field are slimmer. Not impossible, but slim. But those that have the knowledge and some training in it will demonstrate their aptitude for it fairly quickly, and will be able to move into the field fairly quickly once they're on the IT teams.
I really like Jason's point, by the way, for Oz, that even cyber has multiple swim lanes. Before you're the CISO at the very top, you have so many different disciplines just within cyber. Never mind just within infrastructure or data for that matter. There's a huge career available in tech. So don't just be. I would say to anybody, don't be so preoccupied with the one term cyber. Tech is a vast area with great fulfilling jobs and opportunities, and you can go from one to the other as you'll be exposed over time.
Yeah. So from cybersecurity perspective, and to answer Jeff's questions, and to sum up what Gary and Jason and Sue have said, we at Fairtechnics Institute of Technology, we have a 4-course or 5-course program that we spread over 4 months, and we start with A+, so we provide A+ training, And then we provide Network Plus training, because you have to understand the operating system, you have to understand the hardware before you go into networks, and then you need to understand networks before you can go into security. So then after Network Plus, and the person has some training in Network Plus, we expose them to Security Plus, which gives them some experience, or not some experience, but knowledge about how to safeguard the networks, how to safeguard the operating system, how to safeguard the hardware, switches, routers, etc. And from there, we provide them some training in SOC, Security Operations Center. We also have a SOC over here, so we sometimes allow our students to log into the SOC and get 2 months or 3 months of training in the SOC, so that they have first-hand experience on what a SIEM looks like, how the SOC works, and then from there onwards, they can jump into the industry, even if as an entry-level job. But they would have experience, or they would have the necessary knowledge of and the understanding of what's happening inside their organization. So I think at least these foundational training are necessary before you can even start your career. So Jeff has another question, but we'll come back to that later. Because I would like Gary, pardon me, to let us know a little bit more about CompTIA and their certifications, and how it progresses, or how a person can progress in their career taking CompTIA courses. What route they should take.
So first of all, CompTIA, for those who don't know, is the IT Trade Association. So if you think about every single software, hardware company you can think of in the world, they're all members of CompTIA. They're members of CompTIA because CompTIA create training and certification content and exams for students to take, which thus brings more tech workers to the workforce, which those companies can go back and hire, governments can hire from, enterprise can hire from. CompTIA does not build anything just for the sake of building. So for those of you thinking of taking CompTIA courses, CompTIA really looks at the jobs first, and then decide whether there's a market to build content to serve the needs of jobs that are being posted. It's why you'll see the name asked for many times in entry-level positions looking for specific CompTIA certifications. So that's what we are about. And depending where your jumping on point is, you could start as low as Tech Plus, which is more of a entry level foundational. But if you have enough knowledge, right into the A Plus certification, which, as I said, is kind of like your family doctor. It knows a lot about tech, and you can help a lot of people, but you can't do it all on your own. You need specialties to help support you, and you can grow that way.
So like A Plus, Security Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus.
Yeah, they're pathways.
CYSA,
Yeah, we have predictable pathways that people can take. If you were to go to the CompTIA site and look at all of the certifications and the ones that you can link together, they are always tied to jobs. So it allows you to look at the certification and then look at what job does it apply to in the marketplace. And if that type of job is something that interests you, take those courses knowing full well that an employer will at least see that you've been certified in those areas. At the very least, should bring your resume to the top of the pile.
right. And so, as the chair at Seneca College, being involved deeply with education, especially in IT and cybersecurity, what advice do you have for people or students who are entry level, and they come from all over the world? What advice do you have for them about what route they should take for education and training?
I think my best advice for anyone who wants to study anything is to first find something that you're interested in. It's a lot harder to study something if you're not interested in the topic. Some people like going to the dentist. Some people don't like going to the dentist. If you don't like going to the dentist, don't make yourself go to the dentist every day to study the topic, right? So that would be my first point. My second point would be honest with yourself about what you need to be successful in your courses. So some people can do online courses. I am not one of those people. I know for myself that I am more successful if I have a synchronous, if it's online, it has to be a synchronous meeting. It has to be like this, where I can engage with my peers, or go into a class setting. So knowing whether you can do an online asynchronous, which means at your own time, no personal interaction, or whether you need that personal interaction to really solidify the information for you, is really going to be key to know where you're going to go and how successful you'll be in your courses. I think that those are sort of the key things to start with.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Sue. So I would actually uh, ask another question. And this is again, we've been talking about networks, we've been talking about operating systems, and so again, my question, I'll start maybe with Sue again, and then move on to Jason and Gary. So, what is the role of networks, endpoints, operating system, and physical location in ensuring effective security?
That is a really big question. So I mean,
Start with physical security.
I was gonna say, I mean, physical security is just making sure that there's a lock on the door and that only the people that need access to that room or that equipment actually have access to that space, right? Um, it's even going beyond that physical room, but who's supposed to be on the premises, and making sure that those people are appropriate and not, if it shouldn't be the general public, not letting it be the general public. So yeah, all of those things really have intricate and unique aspects to security. So there's specific security for endpoints. There's a specific security for networking, operating systems, making sure that you are keeping your operating systems up to date. Those patches, although they can break things at times, they're there usually to fix a security risk, to fix a vulnerability that's been identified. That's usually what those patches are for. And so making sure that you're doing the appropriate things at all of the appropriate places makes your system more secure. It's never going to be 100%, but it's going to be more secure.
So I'll move on to Jason. Jason, you do a lot of risk assessments. You do, and you secure a lot of organizations.
Well, you don't know what you don't know, right? So without a foundational or general knowledge of physical security, cameras, door locks, as Sue mentioned, you don't have a general knowledge of operating systems and how the services and executables run within the operating system. If you don't have a general knowledge of networks and how they route traffic, then it's very hard to secure those things because you don't know how they work. So having that foundational knowledge, like we've been talking about, I think is essential to be able to excel in security. So just understanding, and we do a lot of risk assessments because of having 20 plus years in infrastructure engineering. I understand how all these pieces come together and they move. So when I kind of really transition into a sole cyber role and worked my way into CISO and advisory and doing risk assessments, I can kind of understand the moving parts. So in my opinion, it's critical path to to do well in security to understand the IT and the network side of it first.
So while we're talking about all this, Jason, you're one of those highly qualified people or trained people who are authorized to assess organizations to like U.S. federal government has come up with a new certification called CMMC. Organizations have to be certified with CMMC before they can start offering services to U.S. government, federal government organizations. So how important is this physical security, operating system security, and network security when you are assessing those organizations?
It's critical. Being a certified CMMC assessor, for those defense contractors who want to do business with the Department of Defense and federal government, military, they have to meet these guidelines. And depending on, again, the organization and where the critical information is stored, kind of dictates what type of security they have. If they have it in a traditional on-premise environment, then all this security stuff comes into play, all the IT security, system hardening, baselines, documentation, it's everything. And then if you store it in the cloud or maybe a hybrid, then you have all the cloud vendor management and shared responsibility items to worry about as well. So you have to be able to look at security when you're assessing or auditing at an organizational level. A lot of people think security is an IT function, but it's not only an IT function. There's very specific things that senior leadership in the organization has to do. There's specific things HR has to do from a personnel security. There's things that legal has to do from contractual requirements and any type of legal mess you could get into if there's breach of contracts or breach notifications, insurance. There's a lot of moving parts to security and fully protecting an organization. So thinking it's the sole job of your IT department is really setting yourself up for failure.
Absolutely. So Gary, question for you. I see a lot of job opportunity, as you said. They require entry-level certifications as well, and especially from U.S. federal government jobs, even the U.S. military jobs. And over here in Canada as well, I see a lot of jobs that are advertised. They actually speak of some of these, or they actually specify some of these certifications. And as you said, that CompTIA looks at the job availability in the market and then produces courses around that. So do you have some feedback for us and for the people who are attending this webinar about what are the courses that prepare people to start taking care of the organizations?
Well, we've already alluded to them, the entry level, courses that, the fundamental course you should have is A plus, to get started in this industry. It'll open so many doors. Jason's point about all the things that he does in his organization. Well, he couldn't start there yesterday morning. So not a chance. And he knows that, and we all know that.
Yeah.
So since this topic originated today around cyber, I asked the same questions to people. I said, well, what is it you're trying to secure? Well, you're trying to secure the network because nobody's trying to break through your front door with a bulldozer to go up to the third floor and steal servers in broad daylight. They're trying to get to it electronically, and that is only through the network. So it's hard to secure something you know nothing about, right? So everything always boils back down to fundamentals, and there's a lot of blocking and tackling that has to go on before you get to somebody of Jason's level and what they do in risk assessment and so forth. So CompTIA set people up really well at the entry level positions, and then there's a number of courses we offer that we state right on our websites. Good for people who have 5 years experience to come back and take higher levels, and then finally the top levels, maybe even 10 years to take our what used to be called our CASP product is now our Security X. It's made for people in the industry with tons of experience. If you tried it out first go around, you're going to fail miserably.
We've not talked about cloud security as yet, and CompTIA has a very good course for Cloud Plus. But Jason, I think after COVID-19, there was a huge rush of pushing everything into the cloud, and a lot of organizations are still struggling with securing those applications and systems in the cloud. Can you talk a little bit about cloud security and some of the certifications that organizations look for?
Yeah.
Because their people or the managers are trying to make sure that the people that they hire are certified by someone to work with those technologies.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think cloud has taken its own lane, just like IT, just like security. People can be cloud focused, and I had the Cloud Plus way back. I think it is a great entry level certification to understand cloud computing, as a whole. And I progressed I did the ISC squared, CCSP, so it's certified cloud security practitioner, and that was a great certification to get deeper into shared responsibility, the legal aspects of cloud, vendor neutral. I thought it's a great certification. So I think those two at a core would get you started in the cloud, but then as you progress your career, then you get into more of the vendor specific. So if you join an organization, they could be an Azure shop, they could be an AWS shop. So then you can start working those tracks and become a more advanced Azure security professional or AWS security. So, and that's what I see a lot of organizations looking for, is those specialized guys, that can come in and really do, wonders and magic with AWS infrastructure, or AWS, or even Google for that matter. So that would be my suggestion if you're going to go through the cloud lane. Is just start with the fundamentals, cloud plus CCSP, and then go specialized into one of the big box vendors.
So under your leadership, you've led departments where cloud education has become very paramount.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of colleges in Ontario now offer a certificate program, or even a complete diploma which is focused over cloud security. So how would you define this education in cloud security, and how would you advise people about these courses? So
So I think if people are interested in the certifications or into the courses and the programs, I think it's again looking at the way that the institution does the education. What's the delivery mode? Does that match your learning style? And then once you're in the program that you've chosen, this is some really basic advice, but attend every class. If you can't attend every class, get the notes from somebody else. Very valuable information is provided in every single class. Even though the topic may seem like it's the same from the last class, it's probably building on, it's going into more depth, it's going into more detail. So doing those things. If there's readings that you need to do or homework that you need to do, those are just going to advance your skills. So, figure out how you can develop those skills. Do you need to stay on campus a little bit longer? If you're in campus, to continue to practice, do you have a home setup? A lot of cyber folks will set up their own home system so they can start to test things. But if you're brand new and you're not going to set up your home system from day one, so stay on campus, figure things out, ask lots of questions. The more questions you ask, the better. And clarify that you understand things correctly with your professor, with your peers. The one thing that we haven't talked very much about yet is AI.
No.
And so you can ask ChatGPT, Copilot, any of them, how to do something. You got a 50-50 shot of it being correct. The information that's provided is based off of whatever the learning is that model has used, and so it could be 10 years old, and so it could be no longer valid information. So while it might seem like a quick trick, ultimately this is your learning, and this is your learning opportunity, and this is what's going to carry you through into your professional areas.
oh, yes, thank you. So yeah, go on, please.
And I would say when it comes to cloud, as I mentioned in my opening, I was the sales leader at AWS for education and not for profit here in Canada before joining CompTIA. One thing I would say to everybody, if you're looking, as Jason mentioned, the Cloud Plus product from CompTIA, it's vendor neutral, right? So it's teaches you how to operate within a cloud. It doesn't. It's like taking a network course that's only based on Cisco. Well, then what happens if you're in an environment where there's Juniper and Palo Alto and Checkpoint, and the list goes on and on and on of all the various vendors that take to make up a network environment, and same thing in cloud. One thing you could do that is that's very worthwhile taking is something like if you were to pass your cloud practitioner certification, you can get something like that from AWS and pay $50 to Udemy for something just to do simple. What that's going to give you is just going to give you a bit of knowledge. It's not going to teach you how to operate within, where Cloud Plus would give you more of the basics of how to be a cloud operator. And don't forget, people think that, oh wow, my stuff is in the cloud, it's got to be safe. It's only as safe as you make it. The very first question you get in cloud practitioning is AWS will tell you that their job is they secure the cloud, not what's in it, right? Because they're giving you this giant warehouse. Think about it as a giant warehouse like Costco, and you got a little piece of it in one little aisle somewhere. You got to secure your little space. They're going to make sure nobody gets in the building through their pipes. But once they give you access and you don't put proper security controls around it, proper amounts of encryption, proper amounts of backup data, and so on and so forth, you're still exposing yourself. So there's ton to learn about security, whether it's on-prem, hybrid, in a co-location, or in the cloud. And most companies have all three of those that they have to figure out and work their way around. So my advice to everybody is as much knowledge as you can get. Now, let's not mix up as much knowledge you're going to be in school for 10 years. That defeats the purpose. The purpose is to get enough knowledge to get into an entry-level position, whichever one it is, in a reputable company, hopefully, and you will grow and learn from there. But nothing stops you from continuing your learning once you're in that company. Nothing stops you.
Thank you very much. So I would like to progress a little bit. There are two things that we still need to talk about. One of them is Security Operations Center. And the next thing we'll talk about is the legislative requirements for security and privacy. So I would like to start with Jason and ask about what basically is the role of Security Operations Center in cybersecurity, and how does it help organizations protect themselves, and what sort of education or training people need to become a good SOC analyst?
Yeah, no, great question. I think security operations centers are absolutely critical, to provide that oversight for organizations when it comes to anything that's malicious or abnormal that could be happening on the network, because there's a lot of organizations out there that they don't operate 24/7. Maybe they're professional services and they operate in a traditional office 8 to 5 Monday through Friday capacity. Well, networks run still 24/7. So you want to have that team of guys who are monitoring your network, through log ingestion and all the security tools that can funnel up to a SOC. So those analysts, they play a key role in security. They're looking at logs, they're looking for anything, that's just abnormal. There's repeated logins attempts from, a region that's not typical or not the right time of day. Those could kind of trigger that there may be something going on that needs to be investigated. And then, of course, they can, escalate that accordingly. So to get into those type of roles, Security Plus, CYSA Plus, Pen Test Plus, all kind of lead into the skill set that a SOC analyst and a SOC manager and different levels of analysts would need, because it needs to be heavy on understanding how to threat hunt, how the executables work, how to read log files, and see living on the land attacks. Just really kind of understanding. That wasn't really the lane I went into, but I have a really fundamental knowledge of how that works. So, and really to Sue's point earlier, which is what I preach, through our intern program, is, find something that you're interested in. If you like that, the offensive, the threat hunting and tracking things down, in a SOC is a great place to start.
Thank you very much. So from education and training perspective, how would you describe somebody who wants to learn more about SOC, Security Operations Center?
So I think that from a training perspective, it's going into, just like Jason said, going into threat hunting, looking for those opportunities to explore that. And then also looking for capture the flag competitions and joining those. They're a lot of fun. They're a lot of work. It really teaches you what living in a SOC would be like, because that's basically sort of what the SOC is doing, is always looking for potential attacks.
Yeah, thank you. Gary, Jason mentioned pen testing, and we have not talked about that as yet. Would you be able to talk a little bit about pen testing training that's available through CompTIA or pen testing courses?
Well, it's kind of like Jason mentioned. Oftentimes, this area of cyber is referred to often as red team and blue team. And think of it as like any sport. You have an offense and a defense, right? You have people who are trained to defend, and you have people who are trained to go and attack. In other words, they're trying to see where the vulnerabilities are and try to break through your own network so that you can make them stronger. CYSA and pen tests are opposite cousins of each other that allow them to do that. But fundamentally, it's only called work when you do something you hate, right? It's if you you got to do something 40 hours a week, like most of us, to support families and things of that nature. If you absolutely hate it, but you got to do it, then it's called work. If you do something you really love to do, then it's not so much work. It's interesting. The day goes by quickly, and Jason alluded to that, and so did Sue. That there's so many avenues within tech. Find the one you like the most, and you can have a wonderful career in that thing and won't feel like going to work every day.
Yeah, I've heard people say, "Hey, I get paid to do something that I really love."
Yeah.
So that's absolutely true. I'll come back again between Sue and Jason, and then to Gary, and learn a little bit about what are the legislative requirements for privacy. For example, privacy is a huge issue in Canada and Europe. I know there's no overarching privacy law in USA, but then CCPA and then HIPAA, these are some of the legislative requirements, and nearly every state in USA has its own privacy requirements. So, Jason, could you touch a little bit about all the privacy laws and regulations and cybersecurity laws and regulations that help all the organizations to keep on top of their requirements?
It's a lot. One thing I always tell people is you have to understand privacy and cyber compliance are two different things.
Yeah.
So privacy, you fall more on the legal side where you can get in a lot more trouble, I tell people. So, but yeah, there's a lot of privacy level training, out there. A lot of it foundationally is based off GDPR. If you're familiar with that, if you're not familiar with GDPR, you want to learn about privacy, read up on GDPR. I think most US based privacy laws that here, kind of vary state to state, in addition to the federal level, are really kind of based on what the EU did with GDPR. And it's very complex, uh, very driven to protect that consumer, that individual, and where cyber compliance, where you get into like ISO standards and SOC 2 and things of that nature, and CMMC being one of them. It's more protecting the organization and the data itself. So to Gary's point, so many lanes. You could get straight into privacy versus compliance, or you could kind of dabble in both. Me personally, I don't do a ton on the privacy side. I kind of tend more focused on cyber compliance for organizations, and just kind of leave the privacy to the attorneys that specialize in it and work very closely with them. But again, it is an available route if someone's interested in it.
So your feedback on privacy and security, or privacy versus security, or privacy and security at their convergence. And I've worked very closely as a cybersecurity expert. I've worked very closely with privacy commissioners, and I love the Office of Privacy Commissioner in Canada and the Ontario Privacy Commissioners. They've done a great job of protecting the privacy for normal person. So, Sue, your feedback on how privacy and security converge and how these legislative requirements really help people.
So I think that these rules, government laws, really help people because it sets out what the standard is, what is expected for how a company is supposed to deal with somebody else's data. And there's been a lot of talk about who owns what data. A couple months ago, there was talk about who owns, all the cars have GPS in them now, and who owns that data, right? Because the companies weren't sharing it with the individual car owners. And so it really is protecting the consumers and protecting the public for who owns that data and what is expected to be done with it, what's allowed to be done with it. There's been some work done where companies haven't followed those rules, and there's some pretty serious repercussions that can happen.
Gary, from CompTIA perspective, I know CompTIA only, as you said, they create courses based on the industry requirements. What is the CompTIA's perspective on privacy laws, legislative requirements, and whether or not CompTIA has any courses available to train people in privacy?
Not really privacy. I mean, privacy would be a subsection of, part of A plus and part of various of the security-based courses. There would certainly be a small section in there. But, privacy is usually based on law of the land, even data retention, for instance. So one of my jobs I didn't mention, I was a director of sales for Commvault, which is a very large based backup and recovery software company. Everything we do is predicated on the creation of data. So any net new piece of data created today in any company has a retention policy. They classify data for different uses and different severities and how important it is to the company. And of course, all the data they gather is what they use to mine and create business outputs to see where the company can drive their business forwards based on the analyzing of that data. So the protecting of it, the securing of it is paramount. And even how long you keep it is paramount, because you don't want to keep it one day longer than you have to for regulatory compliance, because you don't want to be sued for something you no longer have to keep. So you want to make sure that you get rid of it. So for everybody on this call, it's incredible how many different lanes we have touched on, but fundamentally, everything gets predicated on the data that a company has that then has to be secured. It's the applications that you use within wherever you work that triggers calls to the help desk, that triggers outside bad actors trying to break in and steal that data through your networks. It's all intertwined. I'm going to say that from a CompTIA point of view, there's nothing specific on security, like based on GDPR or any of the other ones that exist in the world.
So if you were securing the data properly, you are actually protecting the privacy of the individual. So there are specific requirements because all the privacy laws are based on OECD's 8 privacy principles. And one of those principles is that you collect the data based on the consent of the person, use it only for the purpose that it was collected, and you have to secure it. You have to make it available and you have to make available the policies that are that you have for protecting that data, for the use of the data and sharing of the data. And you cannot keep that data beyond the business need to have that data. And that, of course, also is about, you need to keep that data based on the legislative requirements. But if the legislation says that you got to keep it for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, beyond that, you should not keep that data. That's also something that is legally that you can be held accountable for. So, so yeah, absolutely, Gary. And everything comes down to protecting that data from that information, and there are legislative requirements for protecting that data and for retention, as Jason also said, and Gary, you also emphasized that you should only have that. You should have a retention policy, and based on that policy, the data should not be kept a day over that it's needed for business and legislative requirements. So I'll come back at the end before we end. There's another question from Jeff, and he said, aside from certifications, what qualities would make one stand out to apply to any cybersecurity position? What are the human, qualities that makes you excel, I would say, in cybersecurity? What are things that organizations are looking for you from an applicant for them to really consider them for cybersecurity or any other job?
I'll take that, or at least start. I mean, for me, um, as an employer with my company, some of the things that I look for, number one is, aptitude to have the ability to learn. I understand you're not going to walk in and know everything, but do you want to learn? Are you hungry enough to learn new technologies? Do you see the value in continuing education? But outside of that, communication skills, being able to relay information to customers, since we are a customer facing type company, so being able to explain things in a non-technical manner so the customer kind of understands what they're up against and what needs to be done. Attention to detail is another big one for me, and being able to move efficiently, follow systems, work well, with deadlines, goals, things like that. So that's some of the key personality traits that I look for.
So from leader in education field and training field, what type of character traits you would like to install in your students so that they can succeed in their cybersecurity job as well as they stand out for any application or any job opportunity?
So everything that Jason said, I would say again. I would emphasize the communication skills, and not just verbal communication skills, but written communication skills. I also know how to write an email. Yo is not an appropriate heading or salutation most of the time in an email. It's a more formal way of communicating. So, not using the abbreviations, those kind of things. And Teams or Slack or any of the other sort of quick chat messaging systems, a little bit less formal, but still it's a workplace. So, you need to keep it appropriate. The only other thing I would add initially would be the ability to solve problems. And the ability to ask questions when you don't know. So instead of just going down a path for 3 hours because you don't want to ask a question, versus asking the question, is this the right path to go down to find the answer? And then also being proactive. And that sort of seems opposite of asking questions, but being able to say, hey, I noticed that there's this issue. I'm going to head down this path. Do you think that's the right way to go? Getting the go ahead and moving on it, as opposed to waiting for somebody to say, okay, here's the problem and I need you to go and fix it.
So, Gary, with your 40 years of experience in the industry and being in the leadership role, what qualities are human qualities that you look for when you're hiring a new person, even at an entry level?
Yeah, assuming everybody has the base understanding of, can do the job, then it comes down to soft skills. And soft skills are so important. Your attitude, are you friendly? Do you smile? Do you have a bit of a sense of humor? Do you take yourself so seriously, or are you quick to point out where, you made an error and own up to it? Ownership is really important, to own something, to be on time, to be accountable. All those skills, hopefully a lot of us have received them simply by having parents drilling things into us to do certain things certain ways. We don't realize it when we're young, but they certainly come into play later. But if you've heard of Gartner's Magic Quadrant, well, if we took the two axes and made one attitude and one aptitude, it's a combination of both. So if you're the smartest person in the room, but the most miserable, you're unlikely to succeed in areas where you have to work with other people. And I don't know too many jobs where you don't get to work with other people. So you got to have a combination of both. And a lot of times, employers are willing to invest in somebody who they see has all those soft skills and has a lot of brain power, but they have a lot of ability to grow that brain power. I've always said there's an expression, it's a lot easier to change the brakes than the motor. So, somebody who has drive, they're great to have. Somebody who has no drive, they're hard to speed up. You can slow somebody down who might be going too quickly, but it's really hard to speed somebody up who can't move on their own. Be creative, problem solving. I think that Sue just alluded to. There's a ton of value in soft skills, a ton.
So your feedback was totally outstanding, and so Gary, Gary, your experience and the way you describe things is totally phenomenal, and your analogies, they are like phenomenal. I would think, even me, after all these years of this of working, every time I talk to you, I feel like I've learned something. So thank you very much for
Thank
that
you.
feedback. Thank you, Sue, for your incredible feedback, and Jason, you are my favorite all time. Always a pleasure to have you.
It's my pleasure. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah,
Me
thank you
too.
very
Thank you
much.
for having me for us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And Sue, hopefully we'll meet again. And Gary and Jason, we'll talk
All
soon.
right.
So if there's no more questions from anyone, we'll close this webinar. We are 2 minutes over already.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Jason and Sue.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Stu.
Thank you.
Talk
Bye.
soon. Bye.